Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sawadikap, selamat pagi for everybody. Okay. So let's go back a little bit to the history of Aceh. Aceh is, according to Acehnese, is a very strong kingdom, superpower in Malacca, in Southeast Asia, for 100 years. And also we fought against Portuguese in Malacca for something like 500 years to take control of Malacca. And then in 1873, the Netherlands, the Dutch, declared war against Aceh. And then we are in the state of war with Netherlands from 1873. So long war, WW1, WW2, and 1942, Japanese come also to Aceh. And we welcome them as a friend, as big brother to fight against the Dutch at that time. So in 1945, Indonesia declared independence, but the Dutch, of course, at that time, they don't recognize the independence of Indonesia. And in 1949, a roundtable meeting, transfer of sovereignty from the Dutch to new established Indonesia. So this is the first question of the Acehnese. We never defeated by the Dutch, and then how colonial power transfer our sovereignty to the new established Indonesia. This is the first question of the sovereignty of the Acehnese, or the history of the Acehnese. And then in 1953, first rebellion, because Tengku Daud Bereih, together with other friends from West Java and also from Kalimantan and South Sulawesi, they are fighting for Negara Islam Indonesia, Indonesia Islamic State at that time. And long war from 1953 to 1959. And government of Indonesia and Aceh can reach the agreement in 1959. Aceh declared as a special province. They call Daerah Istimewa Aceh, with 3 special authority for Aceh in religious affair, education, and also tradition of Aceh, adat of Aceh. We can implement adat of Aceh. And then 1970s, multinational company, they found oil and gas in Aceh, and Acehnese, they cannot involve themselves in the development of Aceh. So by this historical reason and also economic reason, in 1976, Tengku Hasan Ditiro redeclared the independence of Aceh and established the Free Aceh movement, Gerakan Aceh Merdeka. So this Free Aceh movement, at the first stage, it's only diplomatic and ideological preaching from Tengku Hasan Ditiro. But of course, Suharto at that time, he don't want to have any other ideas in building Indonesia. So big repressive response from the government. So we can see in Aceh 1989 to 1998, together with East Timor and also with Papua, these 3 areas designed by the government as daerah operasi militer. So thousands of the people got killed, harassed, got raped, tortured, and arson, and everything happened there. In 1998, Suharto fell down. The rise of the movement, especially Free Aceh movement, we got fresh support from the student and also from the civil society movement. So we can say in 1999, 2000, GAM already established shadow government, strong government in Aceh, and can control all villages in Aceh except main road of Aceh. And then during the presidency of Abdurrahman Wahid, he tried to solve Aceh problem not through violence, not by the military operation, but by the dialogue. So the who first person initiate the dialogue in Aceh is President Abdurrahman Wahid. So he approached Henry Dunant Center in Geneva, and then there are many negotiation between the government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh movement in Geneva. And then we can reach some of partial agreement related to the cessation of hostilities and also humanitarian pause, but it's not inclusive solution for Aceh at that time. But at least we can stop violence for 1 and 2 years at that time, 2001. And then Megawati Soekarno Putri elected as President of Indonesia, and she start listening to the nationalists and also to the hawkish military leadership in Jakarta to just go to Aceh, bring as much as possible troop, and then we can destroy Free Aceh movement. So by this idea, they try to terrorize the negotiation between Aceh and between GAM and Henry Dunant, facilitated by Henry Dunant Center. They try to move the venue of the negotiation from Finland, from Geneva to Jakarta or to Bangkok, Singapore, or to Kuala Lumpur or Manila. But GAM rejected the offer. Then during the negotiation in Geneva between the Free Aceh movement and government of Indonesia, it's only a proxy dialogue, no direct face-to-face negotiation between the government and the Free Aceh movement. So the people from Henry Dunant Center, they keep running from one room to another room to bring a draft of the agreement. So there is no direct face-to-face negotiation. And also weak support from international community for this agreement. And then in 2003, the government imposed, they try to order GAM to accept the negotiation place in Jakarta, and then to accept autonomy and then dialogue. And GAM, we don't like precondition. We don't like something like we must accept autonomy first and then we dialogue. We need to stop the violence and then we can have dialogue, but not to accept autonomy. Because since 1959, Aceh already in autonomy, Daerah Istimewa Aceh. So in 2003, by pressure from international community, hosted by Japanese government in JICA building in Tokyo, we got invitation from Henry Dunant Center to attend the negotiation. And then leadership from Sweden, from Malaysia, and from other part of the world, they already arrived Tokyo. But then there is a covert movement by the military in Aceh. They arrested all Acehese negotiators that they are ready to go to Tokyo for negotiation. So how come we negotiate without our negotiators? And then as soon as we arrive in Tokyo, and also back up at the time, GAM back up by two civil movement person, men and women, but it's not full negotiating team we got at that time. And then the government threat GAM, you accept autonomy. If you don't accept autonomy, so we will launch military operation in Aceh. So deadlock, no solution. And then on May of 2003, the government of Indonesia declared Aceh as martial law and pour Aceh with 40,000 troops, non-organic troops from all over Java. According to the military at that time, they can crush GAM in 3 months. But after first 6 months, they cannot crush GAM. Of course, we fought as much as we can to defend ourselves. And then they extend another 6 months. So after 1 year of military operation, and then in October 2004, the new president elected by the people of Indonesia, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and Vice President Yusuf Kalla. So before tsunami in 2004, Kalla and Bambang Yudhoyono, they also tried to negotiate with GAM, but through backdoor, not directly to the leadership of GAM. They approach people from GAM to negotiate. But GAM at that time, we got a very strict regulation in our movement that we will not negotiate through backdoor. We must negotiate directly and must be with the mediator. Because at that time, we got three conditions also. First, the venue of negotiation in the independent country, for example, in Geneva. And secondly, in our negotiation with the government of Indonesia, we must have a mediator, international mediator. And the third is to stop violence before negotiation. How come we negotiate and the military keep attacking our people? So that our principle at that time. So then they changed the military operation area or martial law to be civil emergency law, but still under the same military operation at that time. So December 2004, tsunami hit Aceh, and everybody, of course, something like we are going back to our logic that we must get peace, we stop violence to deliver humanitarian assistance to the Acehnese that hit by tsunami in 2004. So February 2005, the first round of negotiation between the government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh movement, facilitated by CMI, Crisis Management Initiative, led by former President of Finland, Martti Ahtisaari. And Martti Ahtisaari, he got also friend with Javier Solana and other European countries. So we can say that at that time, all European countries, they push GAM to and government of Indonesia to agree on the agreement, peace agreement as soon as possible. So the delivery of international humanitarian assistance to Aceh will go smoothly. Then first negotiation, first round in February and second round in March, it's only brainstorming from GAM side, directing Indonesia that you kill our people, and Indonesia say you do this, you do that. So it's no any commitment between the government and the Free Aceh movement. But then the government also tried to push that you must accept autonomy first and then we negotiate. So GAM said, no, we will not accept autonomy. We want to dialogue here, not accepting the autonomy. And in the third round, Ahtisaari, the chief of CMI, he got television interview. And then he explained about ongoing negotiation in Helsinki. And then he said that we will solve Aceh problem not through autonomy, but through self-government. Because in Finland, between Finland and Sweden, there is an island, it's called Åland Island. They implement self-government there with a specific authority they got from the Finland government. For example, Finland government only care about foreign policy, external defense, and etc. So when GAM heard about self-government, then we grabbed that. Oh, this is very good word. This is not autonomy. This is self-government. We will discuss another round of Helsinki agreement with the principle of self-government. Aceh will get self-government, not autonomy. So Indonesian government also agree with that, that there is a separation of authority between the government of Aceh and government of Indonesia. That first, the word of self-government is very important in that meeting. So we don't bring independent to the table, but we accept self-government. And after that, during the third, fourth, and fifth negotiation, there is a mantra also from Ahtisaari. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So in the third, fourth, fifth round of negotiation, we agree on things that we can agree. For example, economic section related to the reintegration of combatant and etc. Except 2 or 3 principle that we agreed on the last round in July 2005. it's related to the local political parties and number of the troop, and also security arrangement related to the decommissioning of GAM. How many weapons we need to cut for withdrawal of non-organic troop. So we can say that self-government word, and then nothing is agreed until everything is agreed, is a good booster for GAM and Indonesia to keep negotiating at that time. So in the fifth round in July 2005, we signed initial agreement for all this already accepted agreement, because we got problem at that time related local political party. Indonesia rejected local political party, but we insist to ask a local political party an independent candidate for the leadership of Aceh. And then it also deadlocked. But when we think that we already agreed on 98% of the agreement, why we destroy this whole agreement because of these 2% of the agreement? So then this is also booster for GAM and government of Indonesia to reach the agreement, initial agreement in July 2005. Then GAM also responsible to socialize the draft of the agreement to the people of Aceh. And then we return to Malaysia, because we only can return to Malaysia at that time. We are in the exile government, we cannot go back to Indonesia. We invited around 400 Acehnese from combatant, civil society movement, women organization, ulamas, politician, national politician from Aceh. We invited them to Malaysia. We exposed to them the draft of the agreement that we will sign next month in Helsinki. So after long discussion, focus group discussion, and we discussed together, we got green light from the people of Aceh that we send the agreement. Then on August 2005, we returned to Stockholm and then to Helsinki to send the agreement with the government of Indonesia. So many things that become also lesson learned related to Aceh conflict. First of all is we cannot solve problem with military action, and then during the negotiation we must also create the milieu that support the peace process. We cannot negotiate in Helsinki and then keep killing the people in the village. And then the venue of the negotiation, for example, if we move it to Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Manila, or Jakarta, we are under pressure. We cannot be satisfied with the result of the agreement. But if we do that in the independent country, we will get a good place that we are not under pressure, so we can negotiate freely. And also arresting of the negotiators is also big problem for GAM. Because it creates a frustration and everything. But of course, at that time, GAM also prepared layers of negotiators. Its first layer, we can say team A, team B, team C. So if team A got problem, team B will come forward and etc. So we need to prepare that. And also a very important lesson we need also to know about relation of the about peace process in Aceh is to choose the right party to negotiate. Because in Europe, there are many small group of GAM. They also try to put themselves into negotiation, but they actually don't have real power in the field. So the government in Indonesia and CMI at that time, they choose the right group to negotiate, that the one who really control the field. Thank you very much for everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I have here a list about what do we teach in peace studies, okay, and why do we teach these things so that it can contribute to actual peace processes. Okay, so number one in my list is that, of course, we want to teach about conceptual definitions of peace, conflict, and violence. You know, for many societies, you know, we might have slightly different definitions. Although, of course, peace is something that is universal, but it also depends on what situation we are in. So I normally define, peace, according to this right to self-determination context. What does peace means to people who are working towards right to self-determination? Second on the list is that, of course, we want to teach them the skills in conflict mapping and analysis. Because if our students, have a better understanding of the conflict, then they should also be able to demonstrate and identify, okay, who are the ones involved in this conflict and peace processes, okay, and how do we correctly analyze or comprehensively analyze the behavior and the dynamics of the conflict and the potential drivers for peace, so that this is what we need to come up with when we want to develop peace building strategies later on. Third on the list is also skills in conflict resolution and peace building. Peace education is also a strategy for peace building. Fourth on the list, which is really, I think it is really the groundwork, for many of us, especially for educators, is how do we build our peace constituency? Okay. To whom are we preaching, our ideals for peace studies? Not only with those that agree with us, but all the more with students, that we want, and members of the society that we want to convert, to believe in peace studies. I'm sure some of you also face the same criticism that, people doing this peace building and all this peace education, they are really idealists and they are living, in a very ideal world. But in reality, we have seen it, from time and again, that peace building actually works. And all these peace processes that we are discussing will not be able to prosper if there is no strong peace building platform, activities, peace building activities within our region in Southeast Asia. And then number 5 is in the course, of course, we also want to do a further critiquing or interconnection between the field of human rights, peace and conflict studies, development, and gender. How do we make sense of all these fields of discipline? And where do we locate? Like gender, for example. Gender is something that we teach, throughout. Gender is not in itself independent, but it is actually, it should be part of everything, of human rights, of peace and development, that we want to teach to our students. Number 6 in the list is we also want to teach peace and conflict research. Okay, we want to teach peace and conflict research because we want to encourage more, not only students, but also even NGO workers and all of us who want to contribute to peace processes. How do we actually do a more effective peace and conflict research? Last in the list is constitution and building and governance. In particular, Munawar Liza already mentioned, and the same way with the Bangsamoro peace process, it's not only about the peace process per se, but even the peace negotiators will also have to learn how do they craft, a new constitution, that will address, the conflict, that will help in the resolution of the peace. And of course, very important to it is governance. So when you look at all these listings, okay, then you might be wondering, so how were they relevant to the Bangsamoro peace process? Over the years, with the peace process, peace studies actually contributed so much to the Bangsamoro process. Okay, because this was the time at the height of the Bangsamoro peace process, the MILF peace process that started from 2001. That was also the height of the spread, or the preaching of peace studies in Southeast Asia, with the organization of some regional networks like the Southeast Asian Conflict Studies Network, GPAC, the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict, and many more networks who are starting to develop peace building activities in Southeast Asia. So because of all these networks doing many training programs, doing all these seminars and workshops, doing all this informal peace education, not yet the formal education, okay, all of these really influence the ongoing peace process. Okay, in fact, the MILF, not only learned about the DDR, the concept of DDR, but they in fact innovated the DDR to become now what we know as normalization. And all of these they learn, as they also have been exposed to peace and conflict studies. And of course, the capacity itself of the negotiators, both from the government and the non-state armed groups, because some of them are invited, by all these organized peace workshops, then they themselves are also now more informed about how to go about in doing a more effective peace process. Okay, so I will stop there.
I would like to address some issues regarding the peace process in the southernmost provinces of Thailand, which mainly, of course, focusing on the Pattani movement. Some groups that are related to this negotiation, and of course, when I was listening to Munawar, in the case of Aceh, I was really impressed because this is not the first time I listened to him. It was years ago, and I was really impressed by the phrase, which is the condition of negotiation. It's like nothing is agreed until everything is agreed, because this is very significant when we proceed into the negotiation. But let's see, because when I was listening to the story of Aceh, but here in Thailand, we are not yet really understand that the process is already a process, because at a certain point, it's not very systematic approach. And I want to address why we are not considered, or at least I don't consider that the peace process is really going on very well. The thing is, I will talk into the dimension of the theories, some frames of the theories, and of course, and link it with the practices. The thing is, we try to address two issues. Every time when we have to organize, make the peace process, we have to focus on, because the situation in the southernmost provinces of Thailand are also, we can call it violent conflict. So then there are two dimensions that we have to deal with, which is violence-oriented and conflict-oriented. Violence means that we are trying to stop, or at least reduce, the violence of all kinds as much as possible. But of course, when we have a certain conflict, so we have to look for the factors that are contributed to the conflict. So then we deal with those factors. And then when we make the reduction of violence conflict situations, so we try to stop the direct violence. We deal with the structural violence, which is the rule of law, justice, social structure, certain point of positioning of each conflicted parties. And when we talk about the cultural violence, it's about the value, their identities, the being Malay, being Muslim, minority in Thailand, majority in the area, all these kind of issues, the language that they use, so many identity value that is important that will be contributed to, escalation or de-escalation of conflict. And then, of course, we are trying to prevent the violence conflict that may be related to the militarization, or sometimes it is related to the securitization, which may be the justification of, using the violence. Because Thai military claim that they are the peace builder, but the peace builder that of course, like they try to use the military force, in order to maintain peace. So that's another dimension of, like a definition of making peace for the military group. And then we try to see like whether we can maintain, contain the scope of the conflict. We try to make the settlement and try to make the conflict transformation that relates to, like certain values and the culture. So then we have to address importance of identities, as I mentioned earlier, like language-oriented, inter-ethnic, inter-religious perspective, because like there are people with like, it's quite diverse society. So then we have to deal with all of these differences in the area as well. And then whether we proceed, with the first track or the second track, diplomacy, which means that if the government proceed, go with the negotiation, go with the peace process, with the peace talk. So then, what do we make the preparation for civil society, for the public, in order to proceed with the peace process as well. And finally, that we might have to consider about the political wing of the movement, because like very often in various violence conflict situations, we can see that as long as that the political wing of the movement is not yet established, there will be, the trend to use the violence, because that's to use of violence is the means of, maintaining the power symmetrical, So, so when we can do like, what do we do with the process? The process is that if we draw the timeline, so then we have to deal with the past, try to make the platform for the present situation, the current period of time, and try to imagine or to make the scenario building for the future share values that we can move to the future together. So then one of the very important thing is to make the conflict transformation approach by trying to the centrality of relationships, the practice of the paradoxical curiosity, and providing space for creative acting and willingness to risk the situation. Just to let you see the time frame easily, when we have to deal with the past, because like in the violence conflict situation in Deep South, there have been a lot of violence incidents, at least in the past, decades. So then it means that there were people who get, suffer being the victims, and then there are victims almost everywhere and those victims are the parts of several conflicted parties. So then when we start to make the peace process, it means that we have to deal with the wounds of the people in the past, the wound from history record, the wound from, being the victims of the violence, being the relatives and friends of the victims. So then when we talk about the wound, the wounded people, they are like those who can call the primary wounds, which means that you face the abuse of power, you face the injustice directly. But of course, there are those who can call the sympathizers of the situation, for example, like the relatives of the people who have lost their lives, or who have been, the wives that have lost their husbands and all this. So then those people, they have the secondary wound, or those who have be the relatives, friends, or even the sympathizers have what they call the secondary wound. Once we deal with the past, whatever means, you can have social healings, you can have trauma healings and all these kind of things that you can do with the past. Then you try to create a platform for the current situation. The platform that all the conflicted parties or those who have the different, of values, different of, perspective, different kind of lives or livings can share this platform. I mean, this platform is not necessarily to be very official. It can be like a natural platform, for example, like some kind of community markets, or like schools, or kind of community meetings, and these kind of things that have people still can have like weaving their relationships, like still have affiliations to each other in several terms, like not just only on the particular conflict issues, but in several many other dimensions of like of affiliation. And then if we can create such a platform, so then we can talk about like the shared value to see the future, how we see the future together, or how we can move forward, with some mutual understanding, and all these kind of things. But anyway, the thing is, like, when we talk about the platform, like understanding the current situation and try to see the future, making scenario buildings, first we still have to see, like, how the wounds are, affected people, because like when you have, like a very complex situation, so then they are recurrent, of being wounded, people get hurt again and again throughout generations. So then it leads into the protracted social conflict. In the deep south of Thailand, like there were generations of people who get, affected by this violence conflict. That there are people who have been abused by the authorities, and of course there are several of the authorities officers have been killed during the time. So I mean, like, there are people who have been affected and killed, and like lost their lives or loss of their members of the families throughout all of these things. So then these are the interaction of the wounds. Like sometimes you can get anger, not being in the situation, just only listening to the history, you already get angry already, because there's some storytelling, some kind of records that make you feel like irritated and temper. So you can see that these kind of primary wounds from all kind of injustice, you can see, like, it can occur by violence, the violation of the victim's human rights, the harms to victim's person, being ignored, and not being incorporated in the social and political justice, so sometimes like a lack of acknowledgement of the suffering of the victims, like they get suffer and people just ignore. Standing victory of the wrongdoers of political injustice, which means, like, you can see that those people who have been, like, especially the authorities who have been in command right now, or even being in a very high rank position in the political status right now, many of them have been, engaged in violation of human rights or abuse of people by that time. And then at a certain point, you might have to discuss about the harm to the person of the wrongdoers, like just to fight back, all of these kind of the wounds that can come from the injustice. And then, and this is like the way that the situation at Deep South is not considered the very real beginning of the peace process yet, because right now, even we have some discussion, even we have made some preparation, but the thing is, like, right now, most of the negotiation of the peace process are in the hand of the ISOC and the government organizations that, of course, like, in the relation to the coup d'etat in Thailand 8 years ago. So most of the negotiation and the peace process in Deep South are in the hand of the military, that I'm not sure whether they know enough of how to really proceed with the really effective peace process. So then that's how the situation in the Deep South of Thailand is being, and of course, like, might be going in this direction for some few times in the future. Okay, I think this is the part that I can conclude right now.
It is but normal for non-state actor group to always try to negotiate or to ask for the maximum, right? Just like in our negotiation skills training, that you what you call that, the BATNA, the best alternative choice. So you want, of course, to get the maximum. Okay, but then in the process of negotiating, then it is there that you can find out what do we mean by RSD. And then because in the GPH and MILF, they organize the negotiation itself, very systematically. They negotiated on the easier ones first, like the ceasefire, the rules of the negotiation, the administrative issues, until they finally come to the bigger or more difficult topic, let's say ancestral domain. So when they break down all these topics, then it's easier for them to really define and to specify what do they mean by right to self-determination. And of course, with the result of the MILF peace process, when they say right to self-determination, they wanted more powers, more than what is now in the, during that time, they had the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. So definitely to them, they will not accept the existing ARMM. Okay, what they want is more than that. Okay, so to them, it's an autonomy, but greater than an autonomy by specifically defining what do we mean by all these powers. What kind of powers do we get? So just like in the case of Aceh, to them, the keyword was really self-governance. But for the MILF process, they also had this novelty of inventing new words. To them, the key word was a sub-state relationship, a state within a state. So similar, I guess, to the federated states of Malaysia. You have the federal state and the state of Sabah or the state of Selangor. So that is an interesting development in the MILF peace process, the idea of sub-state. In fact, during the time that when they first introduced this was actually introduced by Dato Michael Mastura, the MILF negotiator. It is but normal that people were so against the idea of a state within a state. They said, oh, this is breaking down the whole country, it is challenging our sovereignty. But when they actually define, again, as I said, they identify what are the shared powers, what are the specific powers to be given and all that, then it becomes more easy to chew, for both parties and for the public. So when you are able to do this in a peace process, then you are able to move forward slowly. They've actually started the MILF peace process in 1997, and only in 2001 did Malaysia came, as the third party facilitator. But from 2001, up to 2014, in a matter of 13 years, you can tell that, fairly it is, quicker. The process has been quicker, but this is not to deny that throughout that 13, 14 years, there were also a lot of very emotional events, suspensions of the peace process itself.
When we talk about the multi-track diplomacy, so then it is just like how, of course, like how we, how we emphasize, the preparation for the public and, like a civil society in order to participate in the peace process as well. The thing is, like, of course, like when the first track, which is the governmental organizations and the governmental body proceed with, with like official, basically official a negotiation process. Very often that there are several other channels that civil society and people can also organize. Like for example, like right now in the deep south of Thailand, there are a lot of NGOs and civil society have been organizing analyzing the situation and identified groups of people that they can interact with. At certain points, I believe that the civil society in the southernmost provinces of Thailand are acting quite, more efficiently, effectively with preparing this kind of platform. While the first track is not very much in the move, but there are a lot of people-to-people dialogues more. It might not be very much direct to the main actors, but at least the people-to-people dialogue among the sympathizers of both of the polarized, notions, are really going on quite a lot in the deep south of Thailand.
I want to also inform our friends here that as soon as we reach the agreement, I return to Indonesia, to Aceh, and I nominate myself to be mayor of Sabang, because we open in the negotiation two ways how to participate in the politics. First is independent candidates without party, and second is establishment of local political party. So as soon as we got election in 2006, I got elected as mayor, not from political party, from independent candidates. And then by our experience, all other Indonesian province also monitor the election of Aceh after signing of the agreement. And then they protest to the government. They do judicial review to the court, to the constitutional court, to protest that we must change our election law, that in Aceh is with independent candidate, but not for all other Indonesia. And then accepted by the court, and now it's implemented for all Indonesia, the style of Aceh for election through independent candidates. And related to the local political parties, actually this is not strange in Indonesia. In the first election in 1955, it's many local political parties involved in the election. For example, Partai Pasundan and other party. So I don't think that other people in Indonesia also we must also give them the right to have local political parties. Even in Papua, actually in the law of Papua, there is a space for establishment of local political party, but no regulation after that how to establish the party. So I agree with Bang Magadar Situmorang that all Indonesia also has the right to get local political party to be implemented in their province. Because when we talk about local political party, we are talking about local agenda, strengthening local agenda, not only because now in Indonesian regulation related to the party, national party in Jakarta, the headquarters of the party, they dictate everything even in the city local. Who will be the mayor, candidate for the mayor, who will be the candidate for the election for local parliament, everything decided by Jakarta. This is not good for democracy. So, of course, this is good example of Aceh. We hope that all other part of Indonesia can get this luxury to have, as they got a local independent candidate, they also have to get local political parties. That's the first things. And second, related to the involvement of civil society in the negotiation, actually we started from Geneva talk that we invited civil society movement and also women organization to come to be part of negotiation. But at the time, Indonesia also have a very strict stigma. Whoever involved in the things that related to GAM, they are GAM. So the punishment may be killing and kidnapping. So for example, when we brought people to Geneva to be part of our team in negotiation, they cannot go back to Aceh. They stay in Malaysia. When we involve ourselves in the negotiation and everything, we are under threat by the government, by killing, kidnapping, and also things. Then in 2002, if I'm not wrong, USM conducted a special meeting for Aceh civil society movement. We invited all Aceh civil society from diaspora to discuss about the negotiation. So some of our friends, they proposed to have three-way negotiation, three-feet negotiation, GAM, Indonesia, and civil society. And then after a long discussion, and also about we discussed about security risk after that, then we keep something like negotiation only between the government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh movement that represent Aceh. Even in Tokyo meeting, we brought two Aceh civil society, young member of civil society, student organization. They come to Tokyo. One of them, after the fail of negotiation in Tokyo, escaped to Netherlands and become Dutch citizen, and another one escaped to Sulawesi and Kalimantan, and she hid in Yogyakarta. She got married with Acehnese there, and then they come back silently to Aceh. So it's very dangerous during the conflict to associate ourselves with the parties of the conflict. Any civil society support the, for example, the idea of GAM, they are of course enemy of the state. This is also a problem. But like in my last point in the presentation, we also try to have public examination on every important decision we take for the people of Aceh. For example, before signing of the agreement, we invited 400 people to examine the MOU Helsinki draft, and then they give us green light. So we return to Stockholm, go to Finland, and sign the agreement. Thank you.
Just like in Bangsamoro, we have more, the groups or the society in Mindanao, not only in Bangsamoro, is really divided. We divided according to the original inhabitants, the Bangsamoro people, plus the indigenous people, those that did not become Muslims. So they are also known as the first natives of Mindanao Island. And then third will be the settlers, the Christian settlers. So you have actually in the landscape of Mindanao these three groups of people. So naturally, when you talk about the NGO community, the peace building community, everybody have their own networks. They develop their own networks, and they do their own peace building activities as well, to the point that they actually compete with each other, and to a point that they realize, especially when the peace process hit, some problems during 2004, when the Memorandum on Ancestral Domain was stopped by the Supreme Court, then it also become, a reflection for some of them that the reason why it also failed, the peace process failed during that time, because precisely the NGO community, they were fighting up to the point that they were fighting with each other. And one of the issues, of course, when NGOs fight is resources. Okay, one is resources. Who gets what? Who gets more money from the donor community? And let's be honest about it. Second would be, of course, their definitions. What does peace mean to the Christian settlers, to the Bangsamoro people, and the indigenous people who are natives in Mindanao? So it was then that finally a dialogue happened between these groups, and then for them to have some unification, or at least agree on what kind of peace is it that they all envision to have in Mindanao. So this is why the peace building community or peace building constituency, by the civil society, it can make or break the peace process. So perhaps this is something that our friends from other places can also learn from.
I just want to comment. I don't just want to give some comments on some of the issues that have been raised thus far. First of all, the issue of options and alternatives, especially if we look at situations, conflict situations, we look at what are our options, and we always try to look at other cases. that maybe share similarities, same background, same issues, same context, and how we can move forward, to further the the interests of the parties as well as to further the interests of conflict transformation and conflict resolution. Papua is always also looking at other options, other alternatives, examples, the same way that the Acehnese were actually looking also at options and examples, in their struggle. And I remember back then, after Reformasi in 1998, and then when there was a referendum in East Timor, and then the Acehnese were looking at East Timor and saying that, that's what we want as well. We want referendum in Aceh, because that referendum in East Timor ended up with the independence of Timor-Leste, and the Acehnese wanted the same thing in 1999. They also did, a massive gathering to pursue or to push for independence, but instead the response was different from the Indonesian state, and many numbers of people were also killed during that process of demanding for referendum. But that was an example also of looking at the options, looking at our options. I'm not sure if referendum will be something that the Papuans would want to do. I mean, real referendum, involving the people and not only selected members of the elite. Something to think about. Another thing that we can look at is that it's also interesting, because we talk about the transformation of structures during and after a peace process. And Pak Munawar mentioned that there are some difficult issues that actually were causing the process either to move slow or not to move forward at all. For example, issue of local political parties, and local elections. And even if there have been a decentralization law in Indonesia, I think since 2001, that decentralization is not enough. They wanted more. They wanted more. So it's also interesting that sometimes we have to transform the institutions and the characters of the institutions. And for example, the local political parties, that was done after after the peace process. During the peace process itself, there was a guarantee, from the Indonesian side that yes, this is something which is difficult, but then they will go back. They will go back and try to persuade the Indonesian government that this is something that needs to be done for the process to move forward. So sometimes we need, those kind of effort, and we saw how, then the constitution was revised to allow for local elections and local political parties. And this did not only help the situation in Aceh, but also then was also used, in other parts of Indonesia. So something like this, can improve situation, from all angles in other parts of a country. So, and then the third one, the models, the models about the solution models. We have, self-government in Aceh as a model, that they sort of like pick up from Åland Island in Finland. So that was a model, that was something that they look at. And then it was also interesting that many people from other conflict areas then look at Aceh to look at the Aceh model. To look at Aceh model. And we have studied also Aceh model and give this as an example, for southern Thailand, for Mindanao. We've got delegations from Mindanao, for example, that, from both sides, they went to Aceh, they discussed with the Acehnese people, and, to look at how the Aceh model, has come up during the peace process and how this has become, the solution to the problem. And I know that from Thailand also there have been delegations, to look at the Aceh model. So we are always looking around for models, something that we take from outside or somewhere in the region, and then which might be applicable, as as an example, not really something to duplicate, but then there are elements in the model that we can use. So a lot of this sharing, is also very important. And it's also interesting, to note that the solution, that has been proposed for the Mindanao model of resource resolution is the state within a state, state within a state. And that has been, actually, we cannot call it federalism as such, because there have been oppositions, in regards to federalism in the Philippines. But then this idea of a sub-state, if you look at it, it's something very close, very close to what we have in Malaysia. And you have a system, Bangsamoro, autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, with a chief minister, with a minister, and all those things, which actually do not exist in the Philippines politics, but then you can see that in Malaysia. And it's interesting to see how, the mediator, the facilitator, can contribute to introducing a model that they feel, will be useful, for resolving that conflict. You have Finland choosing the Islands model. You have Malaysia proposing a sub-state model, in Mindanao. So the influence of the facilitator, I think is also there. Is also there. And then in southern Thailand, for example, it's something, difficult also to introduce any kind of model. And I remember autonomy, maybe was discussed by some segments of society in southern Thailand, but it was like a taboo subject for Thailand, until people reminded that, hey, look, there are also other places in Thailand that actually have autonomy. Bangkok has autonomy, Pattaya has autonomy. Why not southern Thailand? And then when that was introduced, then suddenly there was a lot of discussion that maybe this is another option that we can take. And to point out that the civil society was one of the strongest proponent of autonomy, because this was seen as an alternative solution. You have the government with its the position, you have the insurgent movements, liberation movements with independence as the objective, and suddenly you have autonomy, and the civil society then started to discuss these issues. And I remember lots of discussion were going on online, face to face, on Facebook, on social media. So this was something that moved the process forward. So don't neglect the involvement or the contribution of civil society in difficult areas. Sometimes they are needed to push forward certain new proposals, and sometimes it's also detrimental to their security, but then security is something that we know is going to affect us, but if we feel it is something important enough, we will move forward.
At one point I forget to mention, except a strong and good mediator, we also must have a good and strong mechanism of monitoring system. So Aceh case, we have Aceh monitoring mission. All the member of European Parliament involved in the sending the monitors to Aceh, plus all ASEAN countries. So all ASEAN countries, also Philippines, Thailand, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, all also involved in monitoring system. Because if we don't have a good monitors in the field to be judged in the implementation of the agreement, maybe this will be a problem also. Thank you. Only one addition about that, about monitoring system after the peace agreement.
Elaborate a little bit more, because from the continuity of Ajahn Sam's right now, when we have to discuss about what we call something that is not very traditional, something that we are not very used to. If you look on the fourth column, we see that when we look into the conflict transformation approach, we have the practice of paradox curiosity, which means that we do something that is not following the common beliefs or something that you already know. For example, like when we talk about the options of administration, you know, I have been working in the deep south of Thailand for at least the past 15, no, even more, like 16 years. And then every time when we talk about like the autonomous, you know, and it is very, this word always irritate the authorities, you know. Every time when we talk about autonomous, it is like really like they feel like ishy, you know, and it's quite painful for them to listen to this word. And then, but when we talk about like the autonomous to the sympathizers of the separatists, they feel they have another picture of it, which means independent. But the thing is, like they because this is like what they are used to, you know. This is something that that the frame that they have been learning for the most of their lives. It's just like that. We were trying to explain that to have this paradoxical curiosity means that there must be something else, you know, something that you might not even have to really struggle or to kill each other for it. Because I took many, I mean, almost like more than 10 years ago, I took some of like the sympathizers of the, you know, like in the deep south to the north, where there was a movement of, you know, they call self-administration. Of course, they avoid the word autonomy, but it is self-administration. And this self-administration has been indicated in the Thai constitution, and nobody see it, that you can have self-administration. So then, but the thing is like, because of the one who drafted the constitution also doesn't have like, you know, the picture of cultural area, you know, so then they divide administration area as provinces. But anyway, you still can use like, you know, self-administration provinces, you know, in those provinces. And all these kind of notions or new point of view, we need to at least go beyond the boundary that we used to have, you know, with our perception, our interpretation of perceptions, to see the many other possibilities that maybe those possibilities are already in hand, and we don't even have to kill each other to get such thing, you know. And of course we have step by step. I used to have a lecturer who my professor, who used to be one of the separatists in Spain. And then of course, like after this couple of decades that he has been fighting, you know, with the independence. But when, you know, right now there are a lot of autonomous communities, there are flexibility of, you know, of how they could live their identities and, you know, live their life, you know, with the dignity. So then he said that I don't mind whether this country will be separated into 10, as long as we are like we are still in the European Union. We are, yeah, it's supposed to be the same, you know, like here in ASEAN. No matter like how many countries that we be divided, we are still, you know, in this some kind of community. So then we have to see that there are several affiliations of relationship of people in the region, and of course there are several affiliations of the people in the local community. So then we have to cross, you know, this territory of, you know, prejudice, and then come and then to see that there are so many other possibilities available if we're curious for something that new.
As peace scholars, you know, I think we need to be aware of the importance of the terminologies, you know, that we use, you know. So I'm always reminding myself, actually, you know, not to use terminologies that might be seen, you know, as discriminating or looking at it from a particular perspective. And I've talked with a lot of, you know, the Malay Muslim Pattani people in the Pattani region. Even the word Pattani, you know, they, for example, they don't want to use the word southern Thailand. Okay, no, Southern Thailand is not the proper term to describe the area where they live, because they, associate that area with Pattani, going back to their history. So, the word Southern Thailand, they don't want to use. What more, the word deep south, because I'm sorry, I heard the term deep south, and it's like they are so far away, deep south, and they are not really part, of the area. So the word deep south is not useful for them, and it's not appropriate for them. They will also not describe themselves as separatists, for example, along with many other groups in the region, that's fighting for right to self-determination, because separatists means they are trying to get out, on separate. And to many Pattanis, they would say, we are not trying to separate, we are trying to claim back what was once ours. Okay, so if you use the word separatist against them, then it is something negative, negative to them. We are not causing this war. We did not go to Bangkok, to fight the war. Bangkok came to us, and to conquer us, so we are fighting. So sometimes, these are the kind of things that we have to be a bit more, I think, sensitive with, especially if you want to create, especially if we are from outside working and we want to create trust and confidence building with the people in the area.